Hey, Southern Nevada, let's talk about your tap water. Despite its hard, mineral-rich taste, your water surpasses drinking standards, so don't confuse hard water with its quality. Sourced from the Rocky Mountains, your water is analyzed more than 328,000 times a year and treated and monitored 24/7 by a team of technical experts. Learn more about the testing of your water at snwa.com. SNWA is a not-for-profit water agency. Hey y'all, executive producer Layla Mohammed here. Vegas residents know hard work, but you don't have to do it all yourself. TaskRabbit has been helping locals in the Neon City for over a decade with everything from furniture assembly to minor home repairs. Don't let that to-do list run your weekend. Use the TaskRabbit app to describe what you need and find a skilled tasker in your neighborhood who can take it off your plate. You'll see the hourly rate up front, so there's no surprises at checkout. Download the TaskRabbit app or visit taskrabbit.com today to get those home to-dos crossed off.
Nevada is one of the deadliest states in the country for DUI fatalities. It's also one of only a handful of states that prevents victims of DUIs from suing the bars and restaurants that served the drunk drivers in the first place. So today on CityCast Las Vegas, we sit down with investigative reporter Katelyn Newberg from the Review-Journal, and we find out why Nevada has never passed any business-level liquor liability laws and why many politicians think passing one might just be impossible. It's Monday, April 6th. I'm Sonja Cho Swanson, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. So, Katelyn, let's start with the basics. What are Dram Shop laws? Why do they exist?
So, Dram Shop is just an archaic term for a bar or tavern. A Dram Shop law is pretty common in the majority of other states, and it basically allows someone to sue a bar or a server or a restaurant that either overserved an intoxicated patron or served a minor, someone under 21.
I was wondering about the dram, because dram to me sounds like kind of like Victorian, like Charles Dickens, like, hey, have a dram of this, here, whiskey here. I don't know. It just sounds so old fashioned.
Exactly. Yeah, that's where it's from. A dram was just a unit of measurement for beer.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. All right. I've got to get up on my old English here. So why doesn't Nevada have a Dram Shop law or Dram Shop laws?
Well, we're one of only about 8 states that doesn't. And that's what I really wanted to figure out when I was looking to report out this story. And so I talked to a bunch of different sources, and they all told me it's because of lobbying efforts from the gaming industry and the entertainment industry.
Oh, interesting. But not the Culinary Union?
No, actually. The name that got brought up a lot was the Nevada Resorts Association. And it goes all the way back to the 90s when Mothers Against Drunk Driving was trying to establish a Dram Shop law. And the Nevada Resorts Association authored an amendment to a bill that created the situation that we're in now.
Oh, interesting. I'm just actually curious if Nevada's ever gotten close to passing one. So you mentioned that back in the 90s, there was this effort. How close did they get?
Not very close. I mean, it got to a committee meeting with, I believe it was the Senate, and that's when this amendment was introduced that specifically says businesses in Nevada cannot be held liable under this law. And then fast forward to 2007, Nevada did enact a social host liability. But
a social host liability?
Yes.
What's that?
So that means if I, a private citizen, have a party, and I give alcohol to a bunch of people under the age of 21, and one of these minors goes and causes a crash, then, and let's say like the minor kills somebody, then the family members of the victim could sue me for giving alcohol to a minor.
So you could actually, so the family of a DUI victim could sue somebody who's held a private party in their home, but they couldn't sue like a bartender at a business. Interesting.
Correct. Okay. And the law goes so far as to say that businesses are specifically not going to be held liable for a social host liability. So even a business that serves a minor cannot be sued.
Wow, interesting. And this is due to the efforts, as you mentioned, of the Nevada Resort Association. For those who don't know, can you explain what the NRA is in this context?
The Nevada Resort Association is a group of casinos, mostly strip casinos, and, they have lobbyists, and they send their lobbyists up to Carson City, and they're pretty involved in a lot of different areas of legislation. So way back in the 90s, they opposed the Dram Shop law that was attempting to be passed. And when I talked to them for this story, they said that they would oppose any future Dram Shop legislation.
So, okay, this might be a little obvious, but what is the NRA's argument here? Why are they opposed?
It speaks to Nevada's tendency to place the onus on individual people and place a greater emphasis on personal responsibility.
Yeah, that famous libertarian streak we have out here in Nevada, right?
Right. Yeah, pretty much. The Resort Association said that, a Dram Shop law would distract from the responsibility that we should be assigning to individual drivers who choose to drink and drive.
Okay. And of course, they have financial interests to protect. I mean, they don't want their businesses or their employees being sued. And as we know, Nevada does have quite a lot of DUI accidents.
Right. And we also have a lot of personal injury attorneys who I'm sure would love to sue casinos. And obviously, in their best interest, they want to mitigate their risk. So it makes sense.
Yeah. That's actually a really good. We had a really fascinating episode actually a few months ago where we interviewed a personal injury attorney about kind of the ins and outs of that whole world. Fascinating stuff. So has anyone ever tried to sue under a different law or gotten close? Have they been able to, find ways to hold businesses accountable for DUI accidents or fatalities?
Well, the closest I found and the most recent example was related to a 2018 crash where a defendant named Henry Aparicio killed a married couple, Krista and Damaso Puente. The victims' family members tried to sue the Dave & Buster's and the Mexican restaurant that Aparicio was drinking at before the crash happened. They were saying that there's local ordinances that prohibit you from serving intoxicated people, right? And that even though this law is in place, you shouldn't be able to just serve someone to the point they're falling off of a bar stool, was essentially their argument. It got all the way up to the Supreme Court briefly, but then the Nevada Supreme Court never ruled on it. The case reached some settlements, and nothing changed at the law level.
Okay. So there are laws in place where bartenders or restaurants are supposed to stop serving you if you're clearly wasted, right?
Well, for example, it's a misdemeanor to serve a minor. So It is, you can face criminal penalties for serving someone underage. And then also in the law, servers are required to undergo alcohol awareness training. And they have to carry a work card stating that they do this training every 4 years. And the training specifically says you're not supposed to serve intoxicated people. If somebody is too drunk, you need to cut them off. So those are the types of things that are emphasized, just greater training and knowledge of misdemeanors. But there's no civil penalty for breaking those laws.
Gotcha. Okay. So they can't be kind of drained of their bank accounts if they do break those laws.
Correct.
I guess what I'm just really curious about still, though, is kind of the effectiveness of Dram Shop laws. I mean, I could see it as maybe being a deterrent somewhere down the line, but is there even a way to measure that? Do we know how effective Dram Shop laws are, say, in other states?
It is very hard to measure that. I tried to find some recent studies, and there's not a whole lot of research on it. There were some studies that was using data from the 90s and the early 2000s that say this is effective in the states that have it. When I was talking to attorneys, they said that, if we were to have a Dram Shop law, that doesn't mean every single lawsuit is going to go through or be successful. In order to be successful, a plaintiff would have to prove that a business did something particularly negligent and that there was something
for example,
very egregious happening. Like a bartender serves you 10 drinks over the course of an hour and you're falling off of your stool, or someone escorts you to your car type thing. Giving someone one drink and then that person leaving your bar and causing a crash likely isn't going to be enough to win a lawsuit.
Okay, so the arguments there's a pretty high burden of proof.
Yeah, that you would need a lot of evidence that the reason for the crash was because of the overserving.
Interesting. Okay.
When you talk to personal injury attorneys, they say that even though a lot of these lawsuits wouldn't be successful, even the fact that there's a law in place or that there's a threat of a potential lawsuit should be enough that businesses could change their practices or be more aware of how they're serving people.
Right. Managers might come down a little harder on servers or bartenders to be a little more cautious in that way. Yeah, I guess my feeling is like, I worry that, so for example, like I'm thinking back to my college days, when we were go out and party, and I could just tell you that some people would pull off such a convincing, like sober enough act that's like kind of scary. Like I know this guy just, took 4 shots and yet he's walking in a straight line. Like there are some people who can actually pull off a sober right act. Another thought that occurs to me is that maybe there's someone who's leaving a bar and maybe initially they're going to take an Uber, but then they decide to get in their car instead, right? Like there are all kinds of ways that a bartender on a busy night might not be able to tell how much someone's had to drink. Maybe there's a change in shift, right, between servers, and like the next server doesn't know that this person's had like already like 3 or 4 drinks in them. I can just think of so many ways in which like it'd be easy for a bartender to like overlook how drunk someone is. And then like for that bartender who is say like just trying to like make a wage or make a living, to get sued seems like an overly harsh punishment for someone who's just trying to like make a living.
Absolutely. And that comes up a lot in the national discussion about dram shop laws. And, other states have done things like putting caps on the amount of damages someone can get. So you can't sue a business for an insane amount of money. And, personal injury attorneys will tell you that plaintiffs don't tend to go after the bartenders. They'll tend to go after a party with deeper pockets. So they'll tend to sue the actual business instead. Or maybe they name the bartender, but then they get dropped from the suit later. And a lot of those questions about like, well, how drunk was this person? Should the bartender have known? A lot of that is left up to juries to decide or for the lawyers to argue to a judge. But in Nevada, lawyers don't even have the option of bringing that forward. It was explained to me that if a lawyer were to bring a lawsuit forward that was suing a bar for over-serving, it could be dismissed for just being frivolous because our laws say that you can't do this.
The Las Vegas Academy of the Arts, or LVA, is a 12-time Grammy Award-winning high school, the most of any high school in the nation. And the LVA Music Conservatory faculty are performing in a special fundraising concert on Monday, April 20th at 6 p.m. in the Loudon Theater. Mark your calendars. The goal is to raise $50,000 for a 9-foot Steinway Model D concert grand piano. Their existing concert piano is beyond repair, and this opportunity is due to a partnership with Southern Nevada Music. There are multiple ways to support. You can attend the concert, you can donate, there's even a silent auction, and you don't have to actually go to the concert to donate or participate in the silent auction. There's some very cool things you can bid on, including a live vocal caroling event. You can get the mariachi band to come perform for you, get a jazz song dedication. What a great gift. And my personal favorite, you could actually, on stage, guest conduct one of their orchestra performances. So visit www.lasvegasacademy.net to purchase tickets, donate, access the silent auction, and support LVA students. Every ticket, donation, and bid brings us one step closer to giving these talented students the instruments they deserve. So I guess, are there other ways to hold alcohol serving businesses accountable without the possibility of bankrupting them?
Well, in Nevada, like I said, we do require training for servers. And if your business is found to not be requiring the training, then you can be fined for that. Alternatively, there's not a lot of consequences for the actual business themselves. It really just seems it's the DUI drivers that face the penalties.
I see. Is there anything surprising you learned in your research for this story that you just wrote for the Review Journal?
The fact that the law says that you specifically can't sue a business for serving a minor, but a private citizen could be sued for that, I just found that fascinating. I really wanted to get to the reasons why this was happening. And I talked to a couple politicians who said that lawmakers aren't going to try to bring forth a dram shop law because they fear what the casinos or what other entertainment industry lobbyists would do if they were to be elected. And I find that really fascinating, how the casinos and the entertainment industry really influence a lot of different policies in Nevada that the average person might not think about. But it's really everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are some other examples?
I've done a lot of court reporting and crime reporting in my day. So I just did a big story a couple of months ago about a court program that the casinos backed. And I found that interesting, just how they even get involved in the criminal justice system, you know?
So, you know, as part of your story, you talked to multiple state and local politicians on both sides of the aisle about this. It seemed like they were universally pessimistic about passing a Dram Shop law. So why is that? Like, why is this such a third rail for the Resort Association?
I think a lot of them were pessimistic about it because if a politician were to go out in support of a Dram Shop law, when that politician wants to get elected again, the fear was that the resorts would back a different candidate or not support them. And, you know, the resorts didn't really address that when I asked them about it. And a lot of this is people just talking about the fears that they have. But pretty much everyone I talked to expressed the same opinion.
Yeah. What a clear example of, like, you know, lobbyists' influence, I guess, in our legislature. It's fascinating. You mentioned earlier that Mothers Against Drunk Driving got close in the 90s. What was different then versus now? Has anything changed?
Well, back in the 90s, we were seeing a lot more of these Dram Shop laws being implemented across the country. And then fast
Is that
forward
when
to
the kind of like the Dram Shop laws first came into existence, was in the 90s, or have they been around for a while?
They date back a couple of decades before that, but the 90s and the 2000s was really when people were trying to harp on the social host laws, and these get wrapped up into Dram Shop laws a lot. But it was the era when, you know, millennials were younger and having house parties. And there's a lot of stories about teenagers from house parties going and causing drunk driving accidents. So this was one way to address that. And Dram Shop laws got wrapped up in it.
So do you think the like atmosphere around drinking is different now in 2026?
There are definitely different challenges that officials are trying to address, right? Younger people aren't drinking as much. Anecdotally, a lot of the DUI drivers that are causing fatal accidents don't seem to be teenagers, right? And then there's also an increase of DUI drivers who aren't just drinking, but they're also, you know, having weed or other drugs. And multi-substance DUIs are really on the rise from my understanding of it.
Interesting.
As an aside, in Nevada, you know, we have cannabis lounges, and they are also exempt from being sued for providing, you know, legal marijuana to someone who would go on to cause a crash. Yeah.
They would count under the Dram Shop laws as well.
Correct. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Huh. You know, I almost wonder, you know, you mentioned the rise of these laws in the 90s when we had a lot more underage drinkers who were driving. I wonder if part of it came about because it's harder to enact punishment or significant punishments on people who are younger. And I wonder if maybe some of the victims or families of victims of DUI were looking for someone to go after. Like if there was a way to sort of hold someone accountable, then if they couldn't hold the driver accountable as much as they wanted to, they could go after the business. Does that resonate?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of victims who file these lawsuits, you know, they say we want some sort of justice for our loved one who passed away. And they could go and sue the DUI driver, but maybe the DUI driver has no money to be taken, and there's no justice that can be found there. And maybe victims want to go after the root cause of why something's happening. So it makes sense why you would go after somebody who's hosting a party, giving alcohol to teenagers. If you sue somebody and you win, maybe that's a deterrent to prevent this from happening in the future.
I see. So what do DUI victims and their families have to say about all this in Nevada? Are you hearing from them as well?
Yeah, a couple of the victims I talked to did say that, you know, they wanted to sue when their loved one had passed away. I talked to a DUI advocate who said that she has to explain to victims all the time that, like, yeah, it's normal after these type of crashes to think about lawsuits, but in Nevada, we really just have the criminal penalties to go after the driver. And you can't even think about the businesses or if somebody overserved them.
Do these families feel like justice is served when they're, I don't know, told that they can't sue the businesses?
I think it really depends on the family. Crime victims have a lot of different perspectives on this. A lot of them want to focus on the harshest penalty possible for the driver because that's the person who did cause a crash and killed their loved one. The one victim I talked to extensively for my story, her name's Linda. Her husband just passed away a couple of months ago. He was killed in a DUI crash, an alleged DUI crash. It's still being litigated. And the driver in that crash told police he was coming from a bar. So she's left to rely on the criminal justice system. But in the meantime, she wanted to get more information about this bar, find out if someone overserved this driver, and see if she could pursue that. And she told me that because she can't sue, she feels like she can't really find justice in that if somebody had done something wrong. She doesn't even know.
It's so fascinating to think of the lawsuit as a vehicle for justice. I mean, it's such a curious feature of our American legal system, that this is a method for which we kind of exact justice, right? It's not going to bring, someone back, but is it a way of, I wonder, exacting punishment on someone who's done something wrong, right? Is it a way of sort of punishing them financially? Is it a way of deterring so that this doesn't happen to other people in the future? Or is it something else? I mean, it's just such a curious way to seek out justice in a legal system that doesn't offer us as many options as maybe we should have.
Right. Well, the criminal system, punishment in the criminal system is meant to act as a deterrent sometimes. You hear that a lot from prosecutors, But when a business does something wrong, and maybe they don't do something illegal, but when a business does something that society thinks that they shouldn't, we don't have as many ways to punish a business. And lawsuits is one way people try to do that. Like, the civil system is so much more complex than the criminal justice world. And you have to prove just so many different aspects of negligence and liability. But it seems to be one of the only ways that businesses are held accountable in a lot of these cases.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll just end on this note then, because thinking about Nevada and how our state has such a high rate of DUI fatalities compared to the nation, do you think that speaks to some kind of bigger institutional failing? Is the status quo working if the stats are this bad?
I think Nevada, and especially Southern Nevada, is, a party city. We have a lot of visitors and a lot of drivers from California, and there's a culture of bars being open.
It's the California drivers. It's always the California drivers, Katelyn.
Always the California drivers. But, bars are open 24/7, and people are out drinking and partying. And I think and
our road design, we have these giant...
that too. We have no
roads.
Public transportation. So somebody who lives in Summerlin or Henderson has to drive 30 minutes to the Strip, and then they're driving home after a night out. So, I think as the decades go on, public officials have been taking DUI more seriously. And I think arrest rates increase as, law enforcement wants to seem like they're going after this problem and taking it seriously, right? So it's always hard to tell, are our DUI rates so high because they just are? Or is it because there's more enforcement? Do we have more DUI arrests near the Strip because that's where everyone's drinking? Or is that where the cops are focusing their attention? It's really complicated, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate you taking the time to do all this research. Listeners, please go check out Katelyn's amazing feature on this very important topic. It's linked in our show notes. Katelyn, thanks so much for joining us today on CityCast Las Vegas.
Yeah, thanks so much.
And that's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, go tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. Don't forget you can support this show and get some great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Take care.